1.5 million. That is how many schools stand in India today. Now watch this number shrink. 28,000. That is CBSE schools. Less than 2% of every school in this country. So why does it feel like one board sets the tempo for 100 million children? Today we find out. And the answer is not the one you are expecting. I am Ravi Santlani and this is the Education Verdict. Straight questions, real answers, no fluff. Brought to you by ScooNews, India's leading education media network. Everyone assumes CBSE runs Indian school education because the numbers force it to. The numbers say the opposite. India has close to 1.5 million schools, as you all know. CBSE affiliated school number close to 28,000. CISE, which runs ICSE and ISC, has roughly 2,400. Close to 69% of all schools in India are government run, and the overwhelming majority of those sit under state boards. In raw count, CBSE is nowhere near a majority. So why does it feel like a monopoly? Because the number that matters here is not schools, it is gravity. CBSE sets the tempo for urban private schooling. For every competitive exam pipeline, JEE, NEET, and increasingly CUET. And for what an ambitious parent believes a serious school is supposed to look like. A board does not need to own the most schools to own the aspiration. It only needs to own the ones everyone is trying to get into. Here is the part most education reporting misses. Nobody forced this. Maharashtra is switching its own state board schools onto the NCERT curriculum. Class 1 started this academic year 2025 to 26. Class 2, 3, 4 and 6 follows in 26 and 27. The remaining classes phase in from 2027 to 2028 onwards. The state's own explanation was not a directive from Delhi. It was growing demand among parents for the CBSE pattern. Read that again. A state government looked at its own board and decided the fastest way to satisfy parents was to import someone else's model rather than build its own. This is not one state. NCERT textbooks already form the syllabus base for boards across 23 states. Karnataka, copyright permission to run the NCERT syllabus from class 1. Gujarat, same arrangement, same starting point, class 1 onwards. Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Delhi all running the same base. Maharashtra is not the exception. Maharashtra is simply the loudest and most recent state to say out loud what nearly 24 states have already quietly done. Now, layer on where NCERT itself is headed. As of March this year, NCERT was officially declared a deemed university. It can now award its own degrees, run its own doctoral programs and train teachers at a scale it never could before. The single body that already writes the textbooks most of these states just chose to adopt now has the legal backing of a university behind it. That is not CBSE annexing state boards by force. That is the entire architecture of Indian education quietly agreeing there is only one gold standard worth aligning to, and it is not any state's own. Let us name this plainly. The story here is not regulatory capture. The story is competitive abdication. No state built a board strong enough that Maharashtra or Gujarat or Karnataka would rather export its own model than import someone else's. Before we go further, the strongest argument against everything just said, it deserves to be said on this show, not left for the comment section. CUET is now mandatory for central universities. A state board student who scores well has exactly the same shot at Delhi University, at Banaras Hindu University, at JNU as a CBSE student. If that is true, then maybe the board a child studies under matters less than it used to. Maybe this entire episode is fighting yesterday's war. Here is why it is not. CUET levels one gate, one test at 17 or 18 years old. After 12 years of schooling experience already shaped entirely by which board that child happened to be under. Curriculum depth, teacher training quality, exposure to inquiry-based learning instead of rote memorization. None of that gets undone by one common entrance exam. CVT may have equalized the finish line. It has not touched the track. So, here is the question this episode actually leaves you with. It was never why does CBSE dominate? The real question is why did every state board sitting on 69% of India's school decide it was easier to copy the leader than to become one worth copying? That is not a story about one board's power. It is a story about every other board's surrender. What actually has to change? Fund SCRTs and DIITs like they matter. Not leftover budget lines, direct, adequate, sustained funding so a state board can build something original instead of importing NCERT wholesale because it is the only affordable option on the table. Make outcomes public and comparable. CBSE already publishes board level results and pass rate data every year. State boards should be required to publish the same, in the same format, so parents can compare on evidence instead of assuming. Let states compete on one signature strength, not everything at once. Bilingual pedagogy, vocational tracks, art integration, whatever a state already does well. Depth in one area beats a diluted copy of someone else's whole system. Tie any Parak-linked assessment reform to genuine state board investment, not just to CBSE. A national competency framework only works if every board gets the resources to actually teach for it, not just the ones that can already afford to. None of this needs a new law. It needs a decision in 28 state capitals to stop treating a strong education board as a nice to have and start treating it as core state infrastructure. 100 million children are not being let down by one board doing too much. They are being let down by 28 states that decided quietly that competing was harder than copying. Friends, this is the education verdict. Straight questions, real answers, no fluff. Brought to you by ScooNews, India's leading education media network. And I promise to see you next Friday.